All right, it's 12:04, so I'm going to call the policy board to order. First item of business is public comments. Is there anybody from the public who would like to address the policy board? Asking a second time? Asking a third time? Hearing none, I'll move on to the approval of the meeting minutes from March 25th. I think they were all circulated. Are there any corrections? Are there any corrections? If there are no corrections, I'd ask for a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
So
Moved by Wendy. Is there a second?
second.
I got a second from Ken. All in favor of the minutes as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. We have a couple of guest speakers today. Jeff Morissette is the State Fire Administrator from the Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection. And he's joined by Greg Priest, who is the West Hartford Fire Chief. So where is Mr. Morissette?
He's online. I think he's got a couple folks with him as well.
Yes.
Jeff, Matt Hart here. Thank you so much for joining us today.
I appreciate you having us. Is the audio good on my end?
Yeah,
Yes.
sound great.
Great. So are we ready to go?
With the idea of it having two really strong weekends.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you,
Okay,
Mark.
great. Thank you very much. So I wanted to kick off and thank you all for some time this morning to provide you with an overview of a statewide fire service survey that was conducted back beginning in the late fall of 2024. The report for that survey was published right around June of 2025, and we've been making presentations for various groups throughout the state, both fire service and governmental. So I know Cheryl was eager to have us get an opportunity to join you and provide an overview of that. So anecdotally, I know most of you are aware, Connecticut's fire service has been struggling, specifically in the area of recruitment and retention, both on the volunteer and the career side. We've obviously had concerns about that for a number of years. So again, a lot of the information we had was anecdotal. Work was done on behalf of our Commissioner, Ronell Higgins, from the Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection, our Joint Council of Fire Service organizations, which Chief Priest is a representative of, and our Commission on Fire Prevention and Control. And basically, funding was received, and it allowed us to move forward. The original intent was to conduct a statewide fire service strategic plan, but once we looked at the scope of such a project, it was really overwhelming. So we initially began with the statewide survey. So we had contracted out, and we had partnered with Mission CIT, a Connecticut company, who will make a presentation for you this morning on the results of that statewide survey. Jason DeCremer is a principal with Mission CIT, and he is online. Also, I did see Commissioner Higgins joined us, and also Chief Paul Januszewski, who is the chief of the North Haven Fire Department, but also serves as the chair of our Commission on Fire Prevention Control. I know we have a very tight timeline this morning, so I'm going to kick it right over to Jason, and then we can open it up to any questions if there's time.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having us here this afternoon to present our study. Again, my name is Jason DeCremer. I'm a member of Mission CIT, and I've also been a volunteer firefighter in the state of Connecticut for over 25 years. So this study is something that's relevant to me, as not only as a consultant, but also as a member of the fire service. I know our window is short, as Jeff mentioned, about 15 minutes. So I'm gonna get my screen shared here. I believe I have permission to do that. All right, and then hopefully everybody sees that as a full screen.
We're actually
Yeah.
seeing we're seeing his, Zoom, screen.
All right, let me see if I can. Is that better?
We're seeing your browser, Jason.
I know.
Oh, you just see the browser. All right, hold on. I'm sorry. Let me get back to this. Better?
Yeah.
That should be the presentation.
Yeah, looks good.
Okay. All right, thank you. So I'm going to do a 90-minute presentation in 15 minutes without taking a whole lot of breath. So we'll get to it. The project goal, so we responded to an RFP that was solicited by the state. The project goal was to create a report that provides the state of Connecticut with a strategic planning assistance for long-term stability of the fire services in the state. As Fire Administrator Morissette mentioned, this was a survey-based study with the second half hopefully coming up here in the near future. We'll get into that at the end. The project objectives of our study were to provide an overview of the statewide fire services. Primarily, it was a survey, and we conducted a comprehensive survey. We provided analysis of all the data, and then a report which included that data analysis along with recommendations in several different sections. The process included sending a survey out in October or November of 2024 to 315 total fire departments throughout the state. With that, we provided each of those fire departments encouragement to complete the survey, not all at once. It was comprehensive, but to do it in bits and pieces. We provided them with technical support as they needed it, reached out to us, and also follow-up. We also did a lot of follow-up, not only with departments that were actively engaged in the survey, but following up with departments that had not responded to some of the initial requests that went out. Those responses were gathered, and then over a period of months, they were validated and analyzed. Each of our section reports had subject matter experts.
Anything else I can do, Dave, you let me know. I just hope everything goes good for you.
Throughout the state of Connecticut to analyze each section and then provide the report construction. As Jeff mentioned, we published the report in June of last year, and they've done a series of presentations of it since then. This study process, I'll get into the survey sections in a minute, but it was broken out into several sections, which were determined by my company, Mission CIT, and also we worked very closely with the state working group to determine the sections that we wanted to cover and data gather on, and there were 12 in total. Departments were able to go in, do a section or two at a time. They could save their progress. They didn't have to do it all at once. And then that way, a chief officer could take the training section or the EMS section and filter it down to a training officer or an EMS officer to provide that information. The contract was executed in October of 2024. We had a few kickoff meetings with the working group, with the state working group, along with my team. We formalized our process, created the survey questions, which were written and approved by Mission CIT and the state working group, and then distributed that survey. In total, 107 fire departments responded out of the 315, so that's 34%. And I'll get into those drill down on those numbers in a few minutes. As I mentioned, we made several announcements throughout that period with the assistance of Fire Administrator Morissette's office, who provided us with contact information and follow-ups. So very broadly, the executive summary of the report, which is a high-level review of our findings and what we did. Comprehensive assessment of the fire services in the state, as I mentioned. We also included a statewide benchmark comparison. So we sent surveys out to other states of similar size and scope to the fire service in Connecticut, which was a separate study, a separate survey rather. We got responses back from Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Utah. So we use that as a benchmark in all of our work and strategic plans as a comparison to what other states or other agencies of similar size are doing. We got a thorough understanding of the existing landscape. We leverage that into data and analysis of data that will hopefully help inform future policy decisions, offering those insights. We reviewed in the report itself, the first couple sections go over the many laws and regulations and other things that govern how the fire service in Connecticut operates currently. And of course, a bulk of the survey, which it's a 200-page report in total, a bulk of the report is that data assessment analysis and recommendations. As many of you probably know, Connecticut has historically relied heavily on volunteer personnel from the fire service and even EMS service. We've seen a lot of societal changes over the past 50 years, not just here in Connecticut, but throughout the country. And as a result of those changes, a decline in what has been called traditional volunteerism. Many departments, many volunteer fire departments have relied on what we call legacy volunteers, which is a father and a son and passing it on from generation to generation. Those have stopped, or at least it's certainly not as prevalent as what it was. Escalating costs of gear, equipment. Anybody out there that's bought a new custom fire engine or rescue truck or ambulance have certainly seen the increased cost in those. And as our advanced training has continued in the fire service and EMS, the cost of those have gone up. That hasn't necessarily meant that resources have improved. So there are still limited resources for many, especially smaller volunteer fire departments, that impact their ability to invest in some of this modern equipment and make it more difficult for them, if you will, to maintain adequate staffing levels. Recruitment and retention is going to be at the top of every list when it comes to significant issues. We were just in New York State last weekend teaching a 2-day recruitment and retention class, and the lack of volunteers is at the top of their list as well. Lack of funding, which because of that, increased expenses lead into that. Lack of safety equipment and processes. Health issues faced by firefighters, as you well know, the cancer-related bills that have been out there that have been discussed and passed here in Connecticut, many other states, which has led for the need for more PPE, personal protective equipment, specialty gear washing extractors to get those chemicals out, even second sets of turnout gear. In terms of funding, one of the recommendations we made in the study was a potential for a feasibility study, a statewide feasibility study that could focus on some possible revenue streams, EMS billing, for instance, being one of those, but there are others. Communication systems, again, additional, I think, further study on this and a larger strategic plan would be advisable, where we could study communication systems in Connecticut as a whole, look at the land mobile radio system. A lot of agencies are using older systems, older communication systems, a mix of VHF, UHF. We're working with a few northeast or northwest rather departments in the state of Connecticut to possibly write a regional grant for them to upgrade their communication systems, as the expense of those are increased expenses and lack of funding. EMS integration is something we've seen in a lot of other areas where fire departments begin to run EMS and integrate that into their normal daily operations and daily systems. And there's definitely a trend for that nationally, as other studies we completed have shown that. So what is Connecticut? Connecticut is 169 cities and towns. This leads to a fragmentation. There's 169 towns and 315 fire departments. Getting into the survey data itself really quickly here. As I said, 107, 315, we had a 34% response rate. That is widely accepted as good or excellent in terms of a survey. The working group and Mission CIT, we were hoping for around 150. Was what we were trying to get to, but 34% is good. Very quickly, the margin of error and what that means in terms of statistical confidence. The margin of error is a statistical measure of how closely results from a survey mirror the population as a whole. And in this particular case, a 5% margin in error at an 85% statistical confidence level, which is an assessment we do after all the survey data is gathered. We are very confident that the data in there is high and it's reliable. So it's considered to be a good representation of the population as a whole, even though we didn't have 100% of the fire departments respond to the survey. Our data analysis indicated that the statistical confidence level for us in this particular case is high, as that 34% response rate is actually pretty good in terms of survey responses. And there wasn't any other follow-up as part of this particular study. Is we took the survey responses we got, and that's what we used to create the report. We didn't have a follow-up mechanism included in this particular study. The breakdown is here. 21% are fully paid, so that's career fire departments. 14% were mostly paid, which means it's a combination fire department, but they have more paid firefighters than volunteers. 11% mostly volunteer, so again, combination, but they have more volunteer than paid firefighters. And then 54%, which you would expect that to be because that's a majority of the fire departments in the state, 54% fully volunteer departments responded to the survey. The contents itself, we started with introductions, goals, and objectives. We did an executive summary, overview of laws, overview of public protection in Connecticut, and then the primary section, the largest section of the report, we're breaking it off into that survey process, the review, analysis, recommendations, which we don't have time to get into in this particular setting, and then the going forward, so our recommendations moving forward, which I'll get into here in a minute. These are the 12 sections or 12 areas that we looked at. Basic department information, recruitment and retention, funding, staffing, operations, communication systems, training, health, safety, and wellness, EMS, fire marshal, specialty training areas, which included technical rescue, hazardous materials, and then our benchmark survey. And the report is broken off into those separate sections and include recommendations for either further study or legislative policy initiatives, whatever it might be. And each of those are broken down by section. We developed the recommendations based on the survey data that we got, without follow-up, which was something we would ordinarily do, but we weren't able to do it in this case. Obviously, clearly, we looked at national response standards, national standards for EMS, national standards in fire, and as I mentioned, we did our benchmark analysis. So one of the things we use that is very critical is two previous surveys that were completed in terms of a data point for us. There's a 2017 CSFA survey that was done, which indicated 4,450 paid firefighters, 17% of the overall firefighters in the state of Connecticut, and 22,350 volunteer firefighters, which is 83%. The comptroller did a study right before ours, and you will note the difference in numbers, especially on the volunteer side. A slight increase in paid firefighters, but a drastic increase in volunteer firefighters, 64%, 22,000 to 8,300. Overall reduction from that time period was around 50. So that is a significant thing that we looked at and we wanted to address within the study. It's talked about a lot, obviously, in terms of what those numbers are. So keeping this at 15 minutes, which I'm going to do, or at least maybe a couple minutes over, but what we found with all that study and analysis and recommendations and what we included in our report. So legislative changes and policy initiatives are needed to identify some of those challenges. I do know that there are bills currently out there that help to do some of that at the legislative level, tuition reimbursement and some other incentives. Funding mechanisms would be something to consider as well. Encourage and support the consolidation or regionalization of fire services, which is not typically a word or something that most states are comfortable with when you talk about that. But we've done several studies in Maryland and Virginia and other places where regional fire service or county-based fire services and work really well. So that was a recommendation we looked at just as an option for something to consider. One of the things that the comptroller's report indicated, and we certainly noted a need for, was mandating the creation of a chief's contact information and a statewide fire department map. This is very important. Career side, fire chiefs don't change as often. And when they do, there's a process, a more formal process, an announcement that happens, a chief is retiring or whatever it may be. And the volunteer side, turnover happens much more, and it's not really communicated out, certainly to the state of Connecticut when a volunteer fire chief changes hands. So creating that, and along with a statewide fire department map, was recommendations we noted. Long-term sustainable funding plan, which you would need a separate report for that, but that should involve a comprehensive strategic assessment of the financial needs of fire departments across the state, taking into account department type, volunteer, combination, fully career, the service area they provide, and the call volume. Do they have a service area of 55 or 60 square miles? Is their call volume for all volunteer department anywhere north of 800 to 1,000 calls per year for an all volunteer fire department? You're looking at maybe it's time for them to consider some sort of staffing model. Are they able to make the calls that they go on? And then obviously there are departments that serve on far less calls. But even with that, how do we get them the financial and the equipment needs that they require to respond to those calls? They might only be doing 50 or 100 a year. They're still important for Mr. and Mrs. Smith. We looked at targeted strategies to reverse the trend of declining volunteer firefighter numbers. What those are, those recruitment efforts, which should focus on, we call it target marketing. So where you might look at younger demographics or individuals that have bought homes or condos in a community that are, making a longer term commitment to that area. Those are potentially individuals that might be good for volunteerism. Partnerships, high schools, community colleges, and the valuable contributions of volunteer firefighters or firefighters as a whole. I think the key to that is messaging, and one of the highlights I'm going to make is being in New York last week. Last week was a statewide effort in New York State for recruitment and retention, sponsored by FASNY, which is the State Firefighters Association. And we saw a lot of news articles, a lot of news pieces when that was going on. None of the messaging was positive. It was all negative. So one of the highlights we make in our classes is that nobody jumped on the Titanic when it hit the iceberg. Everybody got off. And the desperation for volunteers and the desperation for firefighters, fire department is not going to recruit people. When New York State has a newscast dedicated 5 minutes of the dire need, and they talk to half a dozen firefighters, not one of them say anything positive about what volunteering does, or what being a member of the fire service or EMS service as a whole does for a community as an individual. That's not a recruiting message. Nobody's jumping off their couches, running to their firehouse to sign up for that. So that message needs to stay positive. That fear mongering can't happen. The negative press is great, but make it positive. Make it spin the message into a way that's going to get people to go into that. Offering improved benefits and incentives, the state is doing that, so that's good to see. Enhanced stipends or access to health insurance options are always good. Every fire department we talk to or go over, they need to have a dedicated recruitment and retention officer or committee that's solely focused on that. If the one thing that all of our fire departments need, and I'm in an all-volunteer fire department myself, is we have a lot of great equipment. We have 4 firehouses, but the only thing that keeps any of that stuff moving or out the door or responding is people. So we need to dedicate at least 1% of our annual training budgets should go into the only commodity that matters, and that's people. The equipment, the buildings are fine, but without people, none of that really matters. Training offerings were also something we looked at and recommended, so potentially expanding the capacity and offerings of classes throughout the Connecticut Fire Academy programs, or regional fire schools, which cover the east and the western ends of the state, as well as leveraging technology. The kids today, they learn via online and hybrid classes, so deliver programs, deliver content that they're already familiar with. If you got kids in high school today, they're not coming home with textbooks. They're coming home with laptop computers. That's where they do all their stuff. So making that more accessible to firefighters, especially with volunteers, because we're all fighting those same time constraints, and we need to address those as well. But the training is very important. That shouldn't be slacked off. Continue with the ongoing data collection. That should continue. And as Fire Administrator Morissette mentioned, the second half of this project hopefully happens, where it's a formalized strategic plan study that could provide for several in-person sessions with firefighters and stakeholders, along with deeper dives into the data and deeper dives into that analysis process. And finally, to conclude, the best way to predict the future is to create it. So if you will just indulge me for 1 second, I think I'm still sharing my screen. I'm going to try to get to something else. So you should all see this is where the fire service study lives. It's off of the ct.gov home, and then the CFPC, Commission on Fire Prevention and Control website. So included on this page is the full report, which again is about 100 and 200 pages or so, and then the full version, the full 90-minute version, 100 slide of the presentation. We provided a chat bot, so if you click on this link, it brings you to another page, which is a chat bot, and if I ask the chatbot a question, which I've already pre-done.
We're not, excuse me, I'm sorry.
What?
We're not seeing it. We're just seeing,
you're not.
seeing it.
I'm sorry. All right, hold on.
Jason, I did drop in the chat a link to the report, and they can access the chat bot through that.
Okay, all right. Then I'm sorry. I thought you guys were seeing that. Not a problem. All right. Then we should be back to the main screen.
Thank you, Jason. Jeff, other thoughts you'd like to add before we open it up for Q&A? I also want to acknowledge Chief Priest we have in the room with us today.
So basically, I like to follow up with, our findings validate a lot of the anecdotal information that we in the fire service have known for years. I do see a number of fire service members who are part of CROG on this call, so they can also validate that as well. But as part of that, we see firsthand declining volunteerism, the fragmented governance of our fire service, funding shortfalls, outdated communications, and the impacts of the fire service on career and volunteer personnel, both from a behavioral health as well as physical health perspective and cancer. So, moving forward, we hope to leverage some of this information. There's a number of bills in the current legislative session put forth through the efforts of the Joint Council as well as the Public Safety and Security Committee of that. And I know, Commissioner Higgins, who's on the call, is also extremely committed to, not just having a report on a shelf, but moving forward and trying to execute. We've already begun working on a lot of these issues. The Commission on Fire Prevention Control was expanded as of July 1st. And our chairman has created a number of working groups that have hit the ground running very recently to target a lot of the issues that have been identified here. So, Commissioner Higgins, did you have any follow-ups?
No, I don't have anything to add. I think they may have some questions themselves.
We're yours.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Jason. Thank you so much, Commissioner. I know we've got several colleagues on the line as well, but I just wanted to recognize West Hartford Fire Chief Greg Priest, who's here with us today. Chief, I know you've been active in this effort a little bit and would love to hear your perspective as one of our region's chiefs.
Sure. Thank you very much. Sorry, I'm talking to the back there. Maybe I should stand up or something like that. I'll maybe move up here so we don't have to do it. So first of all, I would like to recognize the commissioner, all the desk staff, and to Jason DeCramer for that. So thank you very much. I am Greg Priest. I'm the West Hartford Fire Chief, but I'm honored to be here today as the chair of the Joint Council of Fire Service organizations, which represents all of the statewide associations. We come together in a clearinghouse. So I'm remiss also not to acknowledge my mayor because my chiefdom in West Hartford allows me to be part of the Joint Council. So I'm pleased to be here. Thank you. I've been listening. I've heard the report a few times. Certainly lots of information being condensed shortly. So here's a couple of numbers that I want you to take away from because I think these are very, very important. Ready? So you heard Jeff, Mr. DeCramer, say 34% survey response. So 34% of the fire departments in Connecticut were the only ones that answered back on this. So I offered that there's some things in there. There's some survey fatigue going on. The comptroller's office's report came out at the same time. But if you're a municipal official and your fire chief didn't answer up onto that survey, does that create some level of concern for you when even we aren't answering up with the data? I give you some ideas, right? We could say, it's just another email that came in, or is that, we're concerned about having to tell you exactly what our level of performance and resources are being spent. So, mull that over in your head. Now, a lot of information being put out on the slide, stuff we're in the room, we're doing virtual, but I heard the gasp when they saw the comptroller's report of a 50% reduction in firefighters. There was a, whoa. Right? So I think it might have been you, sir. You caught that is a very, very significant number. So I'm
on the volunteer side.
And that is, right, this policy board governs a lot of career fire services, volunteer fire services. So don't just be thinking because we have a career fire department, everything is okay, right? If you're a volunteer department, I would tell you should really start to ask some questions, and I'll refine my points on that. So, but let me throw some additional numbers at you that I used in my budget presentation the other day. What if I told you that there was a 56% reduction in fires over the last, I believe it was to the 1980s, right? You'd be like, this is cool. We don't really have to worry so much about it. But now what happens if I tell you that there was a 44% increase in civilian fire deaths? Yeah. So let that percolate for 1 second.
Connecticut?
No, that's national. Yeah, so this is a national problem, right? We aren't operating in isolation. I believe that Dr. DeCramer also referred to New York as doing that. So here's what I'll take I promise I'll take a couple other seconds for you. I'm the only guy in the room, so I'm probably more energetic than anything's happening. So at least I'm moving around, keeping everybody smiling. But here's what I would like to say. I really appreciate Dr. Kramer's thing about talking positively about moving forward into the future is very important for us as a fire service. We don't want to create chaos or scare anybody, but I will tell you this. You also don't want to lull yourself into the fact that there is not a problem. So I would say we need to be pragmatic realists about what is occurring and start to engage what is happening, because the fire service has changed, our culture has changed, our communities are changing, and our fire risk is changing as well, as I've just said. So for a policy person, this is what I would start thinking. The first thing I would say is, wow, what level of public safety is being offered, really being offered in my community right now? Because I'll lay it out there. That's your obligation if you're elected or put into a position to provide for public safety in your community. So you probably want to know what's happening. And then very quickly, thinking about the level of resources that you're using to provide those services. If you are relying on a volunteer fire department, but you don't know how effective it is, you may want to pay attention, because if your volunteer fire service is starting to fail locally, then you are going to either have to provide resources or come up with a plan that works to some of these larger ideas of consolidation. So my messages are this. I like the term ostriching. Just don't be an ostrich and stick yourself into the sand and think that everything is going to be okay. This is our obligations together, partnership with the fire service and our municipal officials. Get engaged, ask some real questions about what's happening there, and try to take some of the recommendations and some of the data and put context to that in your own community. I'm very proud, honored to serve the community of West Hartford. We are doing very well in our fire service, but I know there are communities that are not in that same position, and I would encourage people to really figure out where they are with that. My opinion, watch how I switch this. So I'm in right? My opinion is that recruiting and retention is a symptom of the larger problem that is going on right now. And I would encourage you, you want to put some things into recruiting and retention, but look at what the larger issues are that are going on in your community. Why is that the symptom? You know, should we be looking at something about, hey, we need to relook at how the fire service is configured? So in closing, there are a lot of bills. The Joint Council is heavily involved legislatively on this. We have the attention of folks. I'm always glad to speak with anybody. And then what I would urge everyone to do here after going and checking what's happening in your community is look at these fantastic partners that we have who are engaged with us. The commissioner, the chair of the Commission on Fire Prevention and Control, Paul Januszewski, is on, State Fire Administrator Morissette. Everybody is here to positively support you in what is happening in your community. The comptroller has been amazing with his level of effort with this, the Public Safety and Security Committee. There are tons of people who want to help you in your policy pursuit to make sure that you're protecting your citizens. One thing that we're kind of watching as well, right? I'm going to say the word property taxes in Connecticut, right? You know, I know that this board struggles with that, and the heavy reliance on the level of service in the community based upon the level of property tax that you have. You know, this is where we have to start talking about these larger, bolder ideas about that we need to have a state framework available to us that can help you in your community. But lots of information there. Hopefully, I've woken you back up from the nap after the lunch and everything. But I'm glad to answer any questions. But we do have some really great partners on the line who probably are better positioned to ask or to answer questions as well.
Thank you, Chief.
Do we have time?
If I could just, I have a question for you, Chief. Sure. That's mentioned the concept of consolidation. I thought there were standards that suggested that any structure was supposed to be within 2.5 miles of fire department. Is that not accurate?
So I believe what you're referring to, sir, is you're referring to an ISO, Insurance Services Organization rating that provides an insurance rating for a particular community about what you pay for insurance rates.
Okay.
And that is generally related to how close you are to a fire station and the ladder company.
Okay.
ISO isn't everything, it's something, but not necessarily. I would be looking more about two things, which is well, it's how long will it take you to put together an effective response force and provide that to whatever parts of your jurisdiction that you want to get there. How many people can you put together in a certain amount of time to do a certain amount of tasks?
Okay, so that's an insurance thing, not a professional standards.
It is not, to the best of my knowledge. There are other larger issues, like there's some accreditation standards that may fall into that.
And in terms of accreditation standards, that those govern paid professional departments, not volunteer departments, right?
So I believe there are pathways in the CPSC to do some accreditation for volunteer departments, but I would suggest that in comparison to our partners in law enforcement, where accreditation is kind of a required part and Connecticut has some laws over that, the fire service is much more voluntary for accreditation, and that isn't quite a thing here in Connecticut yet. But accreditation is a benchmark standard and something that makes your community look good. I know Hartford is accredited, so.
Are there other questions or comments for anybody on the
Mayor
call?
Lesser. And then there's one.
Mayor Lesser.
chat.
Thank you, Jason. Chief, thank you. And Jeff, Jason, Commissioner, thank you. This is a real issue, as you know, for a lot of us. Just to kind of illustrate it or illuminate it for Weathersfield, we have the oldest continuous volunteer fire department in the United States since 1803. This is our 224th year, and that is in jeopardy now. So about 10 years ago, we had over 100 firefighters. We have, I think, 53, 54. We put a committee together. I'm on it. We're with a bunch of folks that are really committed to improving this. But so it's a real issue for us and for many of our communities. My question is surrounding municipal incentives. So have you seen where other communities, or do you have any suggestions, whether they be cadet programs, whether they be call time incentives that for volunteers they get more, whether there be some health benefits, different types of incentives that you maybe have seen that have worked in communities, because we are having a hard time. And I think that your point is a real good one, Chief. There's larger reasons in terms of people volunteering in general for things in this country, in our communities. People volunteer less, but people volunteer less for everything, and it affects the fire department, the process to become a firefighter. All those things are big issues for us. But the question is, have you seen some local incentives, things that we can do on a community by community basis that may be helpful in recruitment and retention? I know that the state's doing some things. I'm talking about local. That's the main question.
So if I may, so the first thing I'd like to make a quick stop, pass through the commissioner's office, which is he's seen, the foresight to be on these retention and recruiting issues. He has a specific policy person in his office who's been working very closely with us on high school programs. So I want to make a stop that paying attention to this, and that's great. So Curtis Eller's a fantastic partner for us. And we're still engaged with him. So now I'm going to kind of bring it up over to the reason why I want to go to Dr. Kramer is because he probably may have a more broader insight into what volunteer retention and recruiting programs. So I'm a career chief. It's not my particular specialty. I will kind of touch up on some of the things that I have heard, but I just want to make sure that I think he may be the guy in the room who has the most amount of experience. Doc, you got anything on the successful retention and recruiting, and then I can close up on a few things?
Yes, sir. Yes, Chief. Thank you. And I love what you just did, because we've been doing it more and more wherever we go throughout the country, is putting retention first, retention then recruiting. And I'll give you an example of that. I don't know if anybody from the town of Westport is here, but what was their story recently about the fire department is they can't retain firefighters. So they're having a hard time in Westport retaining firefighters. Well, if you can't retain firefighters, you can't recruit firefighters. Retention is first, solving the retention issue. And that leads to the broader discussion of benefits and incentives and what's important for whom and how do I do that. For a volunteer fire department or for a career firefighter, that's what they're looking at right now. Career firefighter, it's salary and other things. For a volunteer, what are the benefits that are going to drive somebody to either come in or stay? Some that work very well are called LOSAP programs. Those are essentially pensions for volunteer firefighters. And it's based on a point system. So over the course of 15, 20, 25 years, an individual volunteer firefighter has to make a certain percentage of fire calls, a certain percentage of meetings, a certain percentage of trainings. And if they meet all those over the course of a longer period of time, they become eligible for a pension when they leave that fire department after 20, 25 years, whatever the number is. Now, is that an incentive that's going to get an 18-year-old to come into the front door? Maybe not. If you're targeting 35, 40, 45-year-olds after 20 years, you have this benefit. That's something that could work. So go back to then the kid. What is going to drive that 18 to 25-year-old kid to come into your fire department and volunteer? And we could go on for this for hours. I know you guys don't want to, but historically the problem with the volunteer fire service is here's a contract. We want you to sign it in blood. And all you have to do is give us 50 years of your life. That worked. It doesn't work anymore. An 18 to 25-year-old is probably not staying in the community for that long. They're going to move. They're going to go wherever. So build a program that keeps them there for 3 to 5 years. Get really good 3 to 5 years out of those individuals. Now, it means you're going to have to constantly recruit. But if you build a solid foundation for those younger kids at the high school level as junior corps, and I would add that in, create a junior corps program. Have people come in and do that. Build a solid foundation where you can get them into your volunteer organization for 3 to 5 years. Maybe they become a career firefighter, or they go do other things. But also on the back end of that, if they have a great experience, they become a marketing tool for that organization. They had a great experience for that period of time, and you can use that from them. So an incentive, a benefit for that is we're going to provide you with EMS training. We're going to provide you with fire training, Fire 1, Fire 2. We're going to provide you with the orientation of the fire service as a whole that you can't get anywhere else, that could lead you, if you're interested in that, into a career fire department as a potential benefit. Paid on call or incentives that deal with insurance also are helpful. And we've seen some really good programs where fire departments that have a program in place where they provide an incentive to respond to a call, $5 a call, $10 a call, whatever that is, it covers my gas. It covers my gas from point A to point B. And that's something that quarterly or twice a year, I get a check and I can cover those sort of expenses. Those tend to help as well. The commissioner has his hand up, so I want to recognize him.
Sure. So thanks everybody for the opportunity to share. That's a great question, and I love the story about Wethersfield. You know, I think the timing is right, and there's a lot of things that are aligning. One specific thing I'd like to point out is the governor's recent signing of an executive order establishing Connecticut Career Pathways Commission. I think oftentimes we were depending upon that legacy volunteer, whereas I really feel we need to get further upstream into schools and create a more structured approach to volunteerism. Let's face it, some of these folks that are going to go into volunteer firefighting or volunteerism in any capacity, oftentimes it's a destination, but for some it's only a stepping stone. So if we can identify younger people in the schools who are desirous of joining the fire service at an earlier age, create a structured pathway system and an opportunity to volunteer in their community with the agreement of some sort that'll have to be discussed, that, you know, if they give 2 to 3 years or perhaps longer, but I'd say 2 to 3 years of volunteer service, that it may lead to something else. I think that's a way to look at it. I've seen that in other states, in public safety and policing, but I do think the type of leadership that exists right now in the state, you've got Chief Priest in the room, you've got Chief Januszewski, the chair of the commission, on the call as well. I think the right minds are in the room and at the table, but I do think this Career Pathways Commission, you know, it doesn't say anything about fire, but I do think there's an opportunity with former Secretary Cardona to share what the problems are, with the hopes of getting other minds at the table to figure out a solution. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Wendy.
No, we should put that next stupid and words I don't want to say out loud. I just want to brag on my fire chief for a minute. Bud Myers. So almost all these things are happening in Coventry, and I know I keep throwing him under the bus, but call him because we have implemented as of this year a first responder student academy in our high school. They recently streamed a couple of their in-department training, hands-on training, so people can see what you get to do when you're doing a training program for the fire service. He's looking to bring in volunteers who are dual certified and trained, fire and EMS. And has successfully implemented, a live-in program for college students in our fire station. So we have three or four. Currently, UConn students living in our fire station who are EMS certified. And in return for a place to live, they go out on calls. And it also gives them opportunities to take advantage of our training. And, you know, some of them might go into EMS, some of them might go into fire, some of them might go into medical fields. But he has actually increased the number of volunteers in our fire department. And we were looking at not only not having firefighters, but also not having ambulance staffing, because we were completely dependent on volunteers. So I can't say enough about what he's done, and I'm sure he would be happy to talk to anybody about, you know, how they need it happen.
He would be here, but he had a tree fire, I just found out, so.
Great.
It's-
So this is what happens when you eliminate your tree removal budget.
Or I have enough
Ready?
fire.
Oh,
Combos.
I'm not going home after this. I'm just-
Chief Priest.
So I'll just loop us closed on this issue because I know there's some other things going on in the chat. My experience with policy makers is you want it at the highest level possible. We've heard all of the things up to and including the commissioners point out of the governors behind this. So you ready? Here you go. Here's my points for you. Start early, right? Both retention and recruiting. The second is leadership and experience. People leave bad bosses and bad experiences. If they don't get onboarded easily and correctly on the way in, and then they don't feel supported by their chief officers and how it, that's where you're gonna lose them. The other is right behind this is my experience, having been a volunteer, is this identity and purpose. Give them an identity that they're joining something has a great purpose. And then the last part, which we spent the most amount of time talking about, is what I'll call the offsets and the very granular details of how to do it. But it really comes down into the offsets to a person's time and money. So I'll call it the smorgasbord, right? To Dr. DeKramer's point, you have to talk to the individuals in your department and the people that you're trying to recruit and retain. Because if you are asking a 20-something-year-old kid to care about a LoSAP program, he or she will not understand the value on that, and that won't get them to stay. But what I would do is you have your demographics in your community that, you know, who is it made of? Ask them what would keep you here. One, so you want a very specific one. Avon Volunteer Fire Department, I heard it the other day, raised my head. What they did is because they recognize that they have a group of folks who have young kids and that the husbands and wives were spending more time away from the family. They did date nights. So they hired a bunch of babysitters, brought their kids in, brought them all the kids in, and you would have thought that that was like the best thing in the world. So those are the things that help to retain volunteers, and you might be able to recruit them by saying, hey, we have a family environment, identity and purpose. We know you're gonna get up at 4 o'clock to go fight a tree fire. But guess what? Next Friday, you can drop your kids off and go have dinner with mom. So anyways.
Thank you. Took a lot of good notes. Thank you.
I know a couple of points on the chat.
There are two questions that have come up in the chat, one from Craig and one from Bill, and they both have to do, rather than talking about retention, what municipalities rightly can expect if they find themselves in a position where they're transitioning from a predominantly or all volunteer model to a predominantly or all professional model. Is there anybody from the department who has some opinions on that, or Chief Priest, I'd give you the opportunity as well.
Paul, I saw you look over at the screen. You haven't said anything. You want to jump in? He's like, no.
As he's from a combination department.
Yeah, with you in the room, Chief Priest, all the questions are going to you, which is great. So yeah, point taken. No, I mean, I would just say this. I mean, I think as we start to try to close this out, the commission is aware of what's going on, and the commission is doing its best. It's well represented, and we've got a lot of momentum behind us to try to fix some of these issues. Commissioner Higgins mentioned some of the Workforce Alliance issues that are going on. There's also a governor's bill regarding recruitment and retention as well that's going to impact all of us in the state. So in terms of examples, the commission's working on pulling examples together now for what works and what doesn't work. Just also keep in mind that the scope of this study that you just heard presented to you was only the first part of that. So the second half of that scope was supposed to do what we're all asking for now, which is, all right, we know there's issues. Now, what are the next steps? And we don't have that yet. We have to develop that on our own or go out and get it funded to get those recommendations done.
Careful. That's actually my word of advice when you're making that, be thoughtful about your strategic move to a paid fire department. In my experience, I am seeing some communities that go out and they just try to buy like part-time or full-time employees, but they're still operating with a leadership that is either volunteer or part-time. And then what happens is you then become an employer, and I'm watching things pop in the chat about like FLSA and some other things. So I would just say be very mindful of when you get into the business of hiring folks that you are now an employer of people in public safety. Several folks, may get hired without having gone to the academy. They may have certifications, but they're maneuvering between different departments. So you have to watch the consistency, and then that turns into training. Right?
Your words of caution are exactly where my departments are.
So we're always glad to talk, though. You have this great group of folks who are always glad to go to a particular community and say, how can we help? There's tons of folks out there, chiefs associations, firefighter associations, and we're here to work together.
I see Mike from Wellington.
Good afternoon. Thank you for a brief minute. Great presentation, Chief Priest. Most of you probably don't know, Chief Priest and I had the opportunity to work together at the University of Connecticut years ago, both as deputy chiefs there. I also have volunteer as well as career experience. And now in my current role as first selectman in Wellington, I have this other perspective of looking at sort of resource allocation. And obviously the most important resource being the people who are coming to respond to the emergencies. But we also just have completed and rolled out a station location study because we're going to be asking the taxpayers of our community to fund, potential repairs or replacements of fire stations. And with the cost of apparatus going up, we're relooking at, do we have enough? Do we have too much apparatus? So I think downstream of the recruitment, but very related, is making the best use of our resources. We talk about consolidation of the two departments in our town, and one of the things that comes up is streamlining administration. But then on the flip side is a station, if you're lucky and successful, as Chief Priest said, has a sense of purpose. And if the station is concerned that their esprit de corps will be broken when they consolidate with another department, that has to be addressed as you move forward. So I think part of the strategy in solving this problem in the long run is determining how to make the best use of the resources for the town, and that may in fact lead to solutions that might work for both of these problems. So I just wanted to kind of put that in there because I think that's something, especially in the small communities, we need, is the ability to take this beyond recruitment and retention and also make sure we're putting the effort in the right places. Too many stations, too few stations, and all that. So just like to leave it at that. Thank you for the opportunity.
Hey,
Thank you, Mike.
Just a quick highlight, if I could, on that. You probably had seen just in the past week, Plainfield received USDA funding for multi-millions of dollars for a fire station construction. So there are grant programs through USDA for rural communities such as yours.
I do have one in the works right now. Thank you.
And being mindful of the hour, I'm going to let that be the last word on the topic. I want to thank the commissioner and his team for taking time to join us, and Chief Priest for being here as well. And with that, we'll move on to, are we going to table number 7?
Yes, I recommend we table item 7 in the interest of time.
All right, may I have a motion to table number 7 until our next meeting? So moved by Mark, is there a second? Second. Seconded by Peter. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Tip amendments. Mr. Coleman, are you with us?
I am.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Fascinating discussion as an earlier longtime volunteer firefighter, and 2 of my children presently are in their respective towns. It is it is a challenge. I know the time is short. Many of you have been there all day. So I will move quickly through the TIP amendments. They are a variety. Couple of them deal with truck parking areas, which we all know are needed. A couple of them deal with bridge rehabilitation. One deals with pedestrian improvements. Two of them deal with pedestrian improvements, and one of them deals with culvert replacements, and the other deals with traffic signalization improvements. The Transportation Committee has reviewed all 8 of these and unanimously endorses them and recommends same to the Policy Board acting as the MPO, and I would so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mayor Lesser. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you, John. Sticking with Mr. Coleman, resolution for the approval of the CROG local matching funds for Safe Streets for All.
Yep, item number, this item is a local match for a Safe Streets and Roads for All grant application that the staff is recommending that we submit this application. It's an application for a total of, the project would be 1.25 million, including $1 million, which would be 80% from the feds. There has to be a local match for this of 20%, which would be $250,000. The staff is recommending that this match come from CROG's regional fund or the regional service grant. And again, the Transportation Committee reviewed this, supported the staff's recommendation, unanimously approved it, and recommend same to the Policy Board operating as the MPO. And I would so move.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Wendy. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Think about the Zoom lag. Okay. John, you want to close this out?
Yes, this is a resolution is really internal to establish a policy for us for project inclusion in the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, primarily to establish clear guidance for the inclusion of study recommendations that are undertaken by the staff and by the CROG's Policy Board to ensure that the projects are carried forward and reflect the current local priorities, financial considerations, regional needs, and more for. Again, the Transportation Committee and the Cost Review Subcommittee have both approved this proposal and have approved the resolution and recommend same to the Policy Board acting as the MPO, and I would so move.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. Is there a second? Seconded by Lisa. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. I'll recognize Donna Hamsey-Perosha for our legislative update.
Thank you so much. Can you guys all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. So just apologies that I can't be with you today, but I am in the state capitol, and just giving you a brief update in interest of time. So as I mentioned last week or last month, the legislative session is winding down. The budget committees have already reported out, and now negotiations are happening. So this is a really critical time for advocacy, as you all probably are well aware. Just a few items of note that sort of just came up related to our agenda. And I saw some of you may have also responded to this email, but there is a microtransit coalition that has been established around Senate Bill 9, which is the bill that's driving the continuation of the microtransit pilot. And they are proposing to have a press conference potentially, depending on the interest expressed on Monday, I believe at 9 a.m. So for folks that have some time and want to come up to the Capitol building, the show of support for that, particularly because it is on our legislative agenda, I think would be spectacular. They were saying that there is some need to generate some more support or maybe even noise in the House of Representatives. I think there's a lot of support in the Senate, but being a Senate bill, low Senate bill number, but I think the House needs a little bit of encouragement. It is currently in the budget, funded at 10.5 million. So continued advocacy would be great. And I'd love to have some of you up here anyway, because as I mentioned in the last meeting, for you all to just be in the building. And if you're here, I can, catch on the fly, sort of a little insight into my job every day, but on the ropes, just catching your state reps and senators on a tremendous amount of other issues that we're following for CROG and just generally speaking, towns and cities. So I wanted to throw that out there because it is on our agenda on transportation. Moving on to just education, as you all know, there's been a lot of conversations around education funding over the last several weeks. The budget really didn't hit the mark on ECS funding or excess costs. And so there's been a lot of discussions from various advocates around education. The recent press conference earlier this week, led by the State School Finance Project, encouraging the legislature to make some meaningful changes in the ECS formula, bringing the base cost per pupil up from 11,525 to 16,500, and then attaching that to inflation so that we don't have to come back year over year asking for the same support in education. The consistent messaging from leadership in both the Senate and House caucuses has been that they this year are really only willing to provide for a one-time grant. The number that's been floated is 170 million. And the details around how that grant would be distributed, I think are still being negotiated. But, your continued advocacy on, encouraging the legislature to take more meaningful action around education funding, I think really ties into the priorities in our agenda, but also the greater priorities of, the state. Moving on to just municipal revenue reform, there are a couple bills that actually make some meaningful changes in revenue generating opportunities for towns that aren't necessarily hindering the property tax. One in particular is Senate Bill 388, which is the Pequot Mohegan Fund. There was a recent press conference. Senator Austin was there. Essentially, this restores the funding for all 169 towns. This is not in the budget. I have not seen this fully funded in the budget at this time, but I think Senator Austin, being the chair of appropriations, is really hoping for some real municipal voices to be lifted on this, and she needs some help, particularly in her caucus, as this is a Senate bill. Senate Bill 511, which, if you remember I believe last month we talked about, is Senator Fonfara's priority this year. It is essentially municipal growth dividend sharing. So the state would share in each of the community's economic development growth in ways that are detailed or outlined in that bill. And then finally, Senate Bill 2, which is a low Senate bill number, which is a priority for the Senate majority. And this would allow for 50% of the 1% meals tax to come back to the municipality in which it was generated. So hoping that those three bills, continue to be a part of the negotiations. But, your continued advocacy. And if you're here in the building with me, would be great. We can have those conversations live in person. Static meetings, so actual scheduled meetings, are hard to come by right now because they are so busy, and they will be meeting from now until the end, which except for Friday this week. So anytime that you all want to come up to Hartford, I'm happy to walk around with you and call on your delegation members to join us in a quick conversation. Just again, making sure that they keep at top of mind the issues that are important to towns and cities. The other bill related to transportation, so moving back to transportation for just a minute, is Senate Bill 237, which deals with bus rapid transit east. That bill is still alive and well, sitting on the Senate calendar. So another bill, certainly worth mentioning as we continue our advocacy. see, I'm just going through my notes to make sure I hit the high notes. So related to energy siting, there have been a number of conversations happening. To her credit, Representative Jamie Foster has really been leading the charge, particularly for her district, as as we all know, is really been inundated with solar siting. There have been conversations at this point in time with the Office of the Governor, DEEP, and the Commission on Agriculture. The commissioners have all been in the room, and the OTG has been there too. And there's been language kind of back and forth. Nothing set in stone at this point in time, but there should be more word on what happens with that proposal, which right now I believe the only live bill is Senate Bill 144, which came out of the Environment Committee. That is really sort of quickly all I wanted to sort of make sure to mention. Happy to take any questions.
Donna, 144 is the only solar bill that's still alive?
Yeah, the GAE bill unfortunately died in appropriations.
Any questions or comments for Donna on the legislative report? This is your silly season, so I hope you're having fun.
Thanks.
You're not having fun, you're not doing it right.
Yes, this is what they'd all prefer to be doing right now. Thank you very much, Donna. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Sounds good.
Okay, staff reports. I'm going to turn to Pauline. Oh, I'm sorry. Matt is with us from Congressman Porter's office.
I'll make this very quick. Can you just time first? I want to say it's nice to see people in person.
Yeah.
Out today because I've got a whole Hartford Day planned. Very quickly, we are now past tax season, but that doesn't mean there aren't still tax issues. So in the monthly report sending out to everyone, I do just want to make a quick plug. We do have a caseworker on staff. If you have decisions who come to you with, hey, I got an issue with the IRS or Treasury, please give our Norwich office a call. We have a caseworker on hand. I also want to plug for myself, since I've had some people with issues involving economic injury disaster loans and paycheck protection program loans, being partnered with that from COVID relief. So I would be the point person if you get a business owner who says, I have this outstanding loan, I have questions or maybe an issue paying, please direct them to our office. In regards to, I'll make a quick plug regarding opportunity zones. There'll be a longer description in the memo that's going to be sent out from me and our office. As you may recall, Congress passed a few years ago the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which established opportunity zones. This program was meant to expire this year, but now it has been made permanent by Congress, which also means that as a result of that, there'll be new census tract eligibility, tax benefits for investors, new incentives for investing in rural areas. There will be a link included from the Department of Treasury that has guidance on how tracts are selected. I want to make a note, local governments don't make designations or control private investment decisions, but they can help the states decide which tracts to designate by demonstrating an investable project pipeline. Because starting on July 1st, it is states that will have 90 days to select qualified opportunity zones. If you have questions, if there's is there something you want to look further into this, we are recommending that you reach out to TDC.
Thank you very much. Thank you for taking the time to join us in person. Any questions or comments for the Congressman's office? Okay, thank you. Now I'll turn to Pauline.
Pinching here. All right, so very quickly, annual meeting is June 3rd.
Yes.
So please register, and you should have, the registration link is in the packet. As part of that, the CROGS Regional Award Program nominees are up. It's a Microsoft form. Few questions, please fill that out for people you think or projects that you think are worthy. And we'll be looking to going into Windsor Locks. CRPC is gathering treated road salt already. It's that time of the season, that is gonna come up soon. This is a no piggybacking bid, so you have to submit quantities in order to apply. In order to take part in that bid. SS4A grant is up. Brick is out. Brick is also accepting applications. Our Brownfield RLF program is also accepting applications. That's very exciting. If you want to see a big project that worked on, it's the Arrowhead Gateway project right down the street from here. Trip is due next week. Please don't forget our lots of letters, the funding newsletter. And there is a municipal survey out for AI in terms of what municipalities are doing right now and how trying to for us to be able to formulate how we can best help the municipalities in terms of that. And I think those are the main highlights. There's probably other things that I'm missing. There is a public meeting for Priority Pathways coming up, as well as the TIP meeting, which is 23rd. And I have no idea, that's tomorrow. Is it tomorrow? I have no idea what day of the week it is or what day the day is, so. Executive committee is meeting on May 13th. It's to pass our budget, so please, executive committee members, come to that. And I think those are sort of the main items that I can think of running through very quickly because it has been a long morning.
Thank you very much. I just want to say on the annual meeting, that's a great opportunity to bring some key staff people to get more integrated into the organization, to hear a bit about what's gone on over the past year and see how they can bring that information back to your organization. So I always urge folks to do that. Peter, do you want to talk about the municipal services doing?
Just our next meeting is June 9th at noon.
Okay. Is there any other business for the good of the order? Will we adjourn? Motion made to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Made and seconded. All in favor of adjournment, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned at 1:21. Thank you all for hanging in there.
All right.
Get my brain going.
Yeah. 1:21.
It's hard to get out.